Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Leanna Senior Transition Support, specialists in downsizing and seniors residences.
And welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Del Vecchio, specializing in life transitions, downsizing in the senior living industry.
And I'm Corey Sirota, clinical social worker and psychotherapist, author of Someone Died, Now What? Matt, have you ever been hypnotized?
You know, I've been to a couple events. I've never been hypnotized, and I don't think I would want to be. What about you?
Fair enough. No, I have also enjoyed tremendously watching people get hypnotized and look at it and say that there's no way it's not happening. I just couldn't imagine. You know,
it's a hypnotist, mentalist. I'm always amazed. And Stephanie and I were watching Carlito's Way last night, Al Pacino movie we had never seen. It's been around for a while, a real thriller. And I wish we could just get into his mind. And I was thinking of Spidey last night, saying, boy, we need to get into his mind. So go ahead and introduce him.
So, well, it is my great pleasure to introduce Spidey. Spidey was named U.S. Mentalist of the Year. He's performed on NBC Today Show, TMZ, and Rachel Ray. He joined the cast of CW's Master of Illusion, and his Netflix original series, Brainchild, is being watched in 170 countries. Spidey's countless national and international TV appearances also include Fox's Showtime at the Apollo with Steve Harvey, Discovery Channel, and Entertainment Tonight. Spidey has captivated the minds of people around the world with his international TV shows, 40-plus million online viewers, and tours across North America. We are so excited. I can't wait. Welcome to the show, Spidey.
Thank you. Wow, that was such a great intro. I was like you got me excited to listen to myself. I was like, wow, this sounds really good.
There you go. Well, the first question I have to ask you is, because, like, seriously, how does one get into this business, this profession? Would you wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to be a mentalist?
It's so funny because, like, I come from a pretty traditional Armenian family, and it's funny you ask that question because, like, when you go to your parents who are Armenian and you say, Mom, Dad, I'm going to be a hypnotist, they look at each other like, until this very second, we didn't know that was actually a profession. It's funny, it's different for every performer. For me, it was more of a discovery I made when I was on a trip to Vegas with my dad for a jewelry show. I was a young teenager, and as you can imagine, there isn't much for a young teenager to do in Vegas. But there was this magic shop in one of the malls, and they were, like, demonstrating tricks. And I had tricks when I was younger, and I was definitely fascinated by them when I was younger. But this was when, like, my interest as an adult, or not an adult, but, like, not a kid, really, really sparked. And I was watching this guy doing these tricks, and I was like, wait, you're telling me I can learn how to do this? Like, it never dawned on me until that moment that, this is something you learn. So I picked up a couple of things, and I went to my hotel room, and I started practicing and reading through the little booklets. And then immediately my spark for creativity started, because the next day I went back and fooled the guy who sold me the trick because I changed it a little bit. And that's where it all began for me. It was all from there.
Unbelievable. That's Spidey, a mentalist and hypnotist, internationally known. And, I have to start off, Spidey. How did you get your name, your stage name? And how did that come about?
I was actually a camp counselor in my hometown of Mount Royal in Montreal, and we all had to have nicknames because I guess they don't want the kids to know your real names, or it's kind of cute to have nicknames when you're a counselor. Mm-hmm. And mine was just Spidey. It was just like ever since I was young. I don't know why I was supposed to change it. I don't even know how I picked that. I don't know how it came about, but it was just Spidey. And my very first shows were for, like, the birthday parties of the kids. So I went and made myself some business cards that said Spidey. And then, because of referrals and stuff, people would call and say, hey, Spidey this, Spidey that. And so I just got stuck with the name, and I couldn't shake it, and I'm still Spidey.
Well, it's so well recognized now, that's for sure. I mean, it makes people smile. Okay, you tell your parents, this is what I'm going to go into. How does one become a magician, a mentalist? Like, what kind of education is involved in that?
That's really a great question, because when people see a mentalist, it's very people's perception of magic and mentalism is very different. I actually talk a lot about this on my YouTube channel, to where with magic, most people understand intuitively that magic is trickery. They get that. But when they see a mentalist, they think it's more psychology and that you study body language and persuasion. You actually don't. Mentalism is magic. It is trickery. It's just in presentation comes off different. So this isn't something you learn in school. My degree is in social psychology at Concordia, but what I do on stage, what I do in performance, I'm self-taught, books, DVDs, a lot of research, word of mouth, conventions, other performers kind of sharing ideas. And that's basically it. It's like any other hobby. It's like, how do you learn a sport? You know what I mean? I guess there are certain schools you can go to for that, but when it comes to hobbies and passion, I think it's more self-taught.
You're listening to Life on Rehearse with Matt and Corey here, and that's internationally renowned mentalist and hypnotist Spidey. And Spidey, I think you brought up a very important point, because magic, I think we get it. Mentalism and mentalists, that's where it really, the wow factor, that's where I get, wow, how did that happen? And so what do you think is the main allure of performing mentalism?
I think it's the sensationalism of what it implies, right? So when you see a magician and they make a bunny rabbit appear out of a hat, there's two things about that make it less relatable for me. And of course, I'm picking on a very sort of cliche sort of trick, but bunnies out of hats. Nobody does that anymore. But for argument's sake, let's say a handkerchief, right? They make a handkerchief disappear in their hand. There's two reasons why the experience is different than mentalism. The first is everyone watching that knows it's a trick. Handkerchief goes in the hand, handkerchief disappears. Nobody thinks that Mr. Magic has the ability to atomically vanish the molecules of a handkerchief. Everyone knows it's a trick. The second thing is, it's not relatable. It's not something you would want to do as a human being. You don't see the real-life benefit of doing that. With mentalism, though, there's two differences, and I think this is what makes it a lot more interesting to people. Is the first is, people aren't sure if it's real. Most people watch a mentalist and think that the secret lies somewhere between trickery and reality, but they certainly think there's a lot of psychology involved. But the second thing is, they think of all the possibilities of what they could do if they had these abilities. If you could read minds, if you could predict the future, what would you do? You would go bet on the lottery, make some money, or go to the casino. So there's real-life applications to what is implied when you watch a mentalist, and I think that's why it's so interesting to people.
It is at that. It is at that. You mentioned that you watched some other performers. Just curious, what artists, if any, do you model yourself after?
I'm a big believer that every artist, whether they're magicians or dancers or singers or sculptors or anything, jugglers, can inspire other artists. And sometimes, I'll watch an artist and they'll inspire me in the sense that they'll show me what it is I don't want to be doing, and that's fine too. Mm-hmm. I think I could draw inspiration from anything. I get inspired from movies, whether it's like big action movies who inspire me to like go big or go home, or emotional movies that make me want to be more, to play with people's emotions rather than their minds. I would say in terms of performers from my space, my area, it's hard to say. I've always admired Penn and Teller and how they go for those deeply deceptive magic tricks. I love that. Their psychology behind their magic is wonderful. David Copperfield, I think, is, although it doesn't have a direct impact on my line of work, I think is a very inspirational performer to watch. Darren Brown, he's a guy out in England who does mentalism. He's probably the best mentalist in the world. He's really, really great to watch as well. But again, I draw inspiration from pretty much anyone that I watch.
We're talking with mentalist and hypnotist Spidey. And Spidey, you've wowed audiences all over the world. You've been on TV, live shows, 20 million plus viewers also. And that's got to be a lot of pressure, especially on these live shows.
Welcome back. You're listening to Life on Rehearsed. I'm Corey Sirota, along with my co-host Matt Del Vecchio, and we are talking to internationally renowned mentalist and hypnotist Spidey. Spidey, you've been all over. You've done all these incredible shows. Can you talk to us? We want to hear a little bit about what it was like to perform on these different networks and platforms.
Well, it's funny because there's just so many stories to tell when it comes to this space. Also, I really do appreciate that soundtrack from The Greatest Showman. You were talking about inspiration earlier. That movie has inspired me more than any other thing in the world. So I love it. Thanks. So I'm gonna really quickly talk about 3 experiences, when it comes to all these different platforms, because I think they're 3 of the biggest pillars that shaped my career and that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And the first one was, Montrealers who are listening will remember that years ago I was in the Guzzo movie theaters. Before the movies, I had my little magic videos before the movies during the previews. And the first time I saw myself on that was an unforgettable moment because, you see yourself on TV, you see yourself on YouTube, but when you see yourself on a giant screen and your nose is the size of your car, it's just a whole different experience. And I was like in shock. And I remember every now and then I'd sneak into movies. When people recognized me, I couldn't even make it into the hall. But when, sometimes I would be with a couple of friends and put my hood on and go. And just to be in a room with like 500 people watching me, and like it was just kind of surreal every time that happened. So that was a remarkable experience. The second one I want to talk about is the first time I ever performed for Penn & Teller, which was on Sci-Fi's Wizard Wars. It was also my first big appearance on American television on one of the big networks. And it was crazy because I was so nervous backstage. My stomach was in knots. And the moment I stepped out on stage, it was just me, like full comfort, the same guy you get whenever you go see one of my shows. And I just ran through my set effortlessly, high energy. And the second it ended, I look up and I see Penn & Teller. It's so funny because they were like almost invisible to that moment. And then I stop my set and I go, and Penn starts talking and I go, oh my God, I just performed for Penn & Teller. This is ridiculous. And I don't even remember what he said to me because I was just panicking in my head. Like, did this just really happen? So that was incredible. Right. And then the third one was the Apollo, of course, in Harlem, New York, one of the most notorious theaters in the world for its history, for its rich history and the artists that it's brought. And it's known for its crowd that can be extremely unforgiving if anything goes wrong. So just being on that stage, the Apollo in New York, was something I will never, ever forget for the rest of my life.
Must have been so special. That's internationally renowned mentalist and hypnotist Spidey, who is a Montrealer, we must add, very proud Montrealer, and glad to have you here on Life on Rehearse, Spidey. Now, we talked a little bit about the difference between mentalism and magic. You do a lot of hypnotism as well.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
always amazed by hypnotists. So can you tell us a little bit more about hypnotists and the difference between that and mentalism?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's really ironic because when people see a mentalist and a hypnotist, they call one of them they think is fake, one of them they think is real. The problem is they've got it extremely the wrong way. So people see hypnosis and a lot of people have a tendency to go, no, that's fake. They're playing along, or there's some sort of acting or some sort of gimmick. And then they see mentalism and they go, oh my God, this guy could read minds. It's the opposite. Mentalism is trickery. The basis of mentalism is trickery. Like a magic trick, there's a secret that you don't know that allows us to do what we do. But hypnosis is as real as it gets. We could debate for hours the reality of what's happening in their head, but when you've seen someone who's legit been on stage, deep trance, they did the whole show and they come out of it successfully, there is just something about that is unlike any magic trick, any mentalism I've ever seen. Like, it's just so real, the experience that they go through, and it's so life-changing. Years later, you run into these people, and they still talk about their experience like it was yesterday. It's just a wonderful experience, and I love doing it, and I miss it, because ever since COVID hit, I haven't done hypnosis because it's not something you can do virtually. You have to do it in person with people close to each other on stage. So right now, hypnosis shows are just not a thing.
Right. Unfortunately, and hopefully soon enough. So I got to ask you, what is your favorite trick and why? This is like, Corey, asking me what my favorite trick is would be like asking someone what their favorite piece of clothing is. It really depends on the situation. So like if we're at a dinner party and I need to do something, intimate after that, I'm going to go for something that's a little bit more presentation driven with a story to it, something nice and rich. But if I'm, like at a festival or a bar back when those were things, I'm probably going to do something a little bit more visual, a little bit more direct. So it really depends on the situation. But in my virtual show, there's a piece that I absolutely love, and it's got to do with a happy thought of one of the spectators who's watching, over video chat, thinking of something, and I reveal that, and it gets really emotional and cool.
That's Spidey, mentalist and hypnotist. And you just mentioned virtually, I guess your world, like many other performers' worlds, have been changed. So how are you doing that? Are you doing, you said hypnotism is pretty well out the door now.
Yeah.
So what are you doing for virtual shows, and how does it work?
So I've got a virtual magic and mentalism show. And I think the reason, Corey, I wanted to thank you for bringing me on your show, but I think the reason she knew about me is through the Cumming Center, who is going to have me on February 17th, and you guys could find all the information on cummingcenter.org. And basically, it's a virtual show where, whether it's public or for corporations, whoever it is, whoever the audience is, they are watching me on their screen, but they could turn on their cameras, whether it's on their phone or their laptop, and they come in and I read your mind right through the screen, and I do fun tricks, sometimes visual, sometimes with your thoughts, sometimes, it's funny, sometimes dramatic, but it's super interactive. Despite the fact that we're not in the same room, we've been able to find ways to make it super interactive. You could participate, you can help me out with the tricks, you could chat, you could comment. So it is, despite the fact that we're not in the same room, it does remain a very social activity, and it's a lot of fun. I do recommend it, although I'm probably biased. Check it out if you get a chance.
Well, Spidey, thank you so much. And we're going to just repeat that. You're performing all over, but here's one local with a local flavor to it with Spidey, and that's at the Cumming Center. It's at February 17th at 7:30 p.m. I believe you can go on the Cumming Center website to purchase tickets. And besides the Cumming Center, anything in the works down the road, Spidey?
It's really weird right now because it's like everything's been put on pause. So right now I'm still working on my YouTube channel, as I always have. If any of the listeners, you're bored, you're looking to pick up a new hobby because you're locked down at home, go check out my YouTube channel. You could learn some really cool, easy magic and mentalism tricks that you could do for your friends and family. So I'm working a lot on the YouTube. I'm doing a lot of virtual shows. I thought this pandemic was going to end my career, but I just had one of the busiest Decembers to date in my whole career because the virtual thing is really working. People are really enjoying it, and I hope to see you guys at the Cumming Center show as well. But in terms of big projects like TV and stuff, everything is on pause right now. I'm not really in touch with any of the producers because everything is just slowed down to a halt, and we're just kind of waiting for this to pass to just get back on it,
Well, I thank you for what you're doing in spreading joy and entertainment with everybody. Thanks so much for your time today and all the information. People can check you out on your website, Spidey?
Well, just mostly social media. Yeah, SpideyMagic.com, but on social media, so YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, it's Spidey Hypnosis. One word, SpideyHypnosis.
Spidey, thank you very much. Corey, did you hear all that TikTok, Instagram, all that young people stuff? We got to figure out what that is. But good for you. 20 million viewers. I think you're doing a great job, Spidey. Thanks for coming on.
Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Corey, what do you have next week?
Next week, he lost over 100 pounds, maintained his weight, and created a protein bar to help others become even healthier. Join us as we interview personal trainer Ryan Schwartz.
And what are the signs that you or someone you know is having a stroke? We'll be talking to stroke prevention with neurologist Dr. Ted Ween. And we want to thank you for listening to Life Unrehearsed. And we also want to thank our technical producer, Dustin Kagan-Fleming. Great job, Dustin, filling in for Dave Simon. And you can catch us every Sunday at 4 p.m. on CJD 800.